that, I would like to call Osinachi. Is Osinachi here?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, so you're welcome. And Osinachi will be talking to us about Afrolongevity, Afrolongevity and the bioenhanced future. So Osinachi, please be mindful of the time. You have 15 minutes. Thank you.
Can you see my screen?
It hasn't started. Okay, we can see it now.
I'm trying to. Okay, thank you so much for having me. My name is Osinakachi Akumakalo. The first and the second presentation did justice to the topic, and I'm feeling a type of way because of how Dr. Chimakonam raised the bar. You know, she is a big masquerade in the field of transhumanism. And building from her presentation, I'll be talking about Afrolongevity and bioenhanced future. So I have my opening questions. Machines now speak to our thoughts. Of course, we know the age and time that we find ourselves with neural links and DNA being editable using some genetic panels to edit the genetic codes. Enhancement, what does it mean for Africans to live in the bioenhanced age? So all these things center on a single question: can Africa define its own standard for the bioenhanced future? So when the subject here is Africa, what is Africa? Who is the African? What ought Africa to be? What is Africa? And where do we move from here as Africans? So I'll have to borrow Izu Marceloniocha's idea to answer some of these questions and then move directly to the presentation. So the question of Africa is what is Africa is a metaphysical question, and it encapsulates the what of the reality called Africa. And here we have to deal with issues like the geography, the psychology, the economy, and the politics around Africa and how it impacts the life of an African. So who is the African? So here I'll be considering those born in Africa and of African parents, Africans, those born of African but domiciled outside Africa, because you cannot do away with their genetic factors and their evolutionary factors. Then those who are not Africans but are domiciled in Africa, so the environmental factors also impact them. Those who, for cultural, religious, political ideology, have affinity to Africa and then are now in Africa. So what ought Africans to be challenges us to look into those things that people, those outside Africa, set as standard that ought to be African. But we cannot allow that, because we Africans should know what ought to be African. So what then is Africa is the core foundation to position the African person and what it means for Afro-longevity. So now the question now that we need to understand is that if science and history helps us to understand that Africa is like a signpost for humanity that reads sideways. Humanity begins from Africa and humanity also ends from Africa. What then does it mean for Africa, and where do Africa belong? Now, this brings us to the idea of Afro-longevity, the framework, because when we talk about the bioenhanced person in Africa, we sometimes tend to forget that there are some gaps that needs to be closed. We need to bridge the longevity divide, those factors that is even affecting the biological nature of the African person. So the Afro-longevity framework here now is looking at the African person, improving the quality of life of the African person by asking those philosophical questions, helping us to come up with what I call biophilosophy. So it helps us to ask some of those core philosophical questions or biophilosophical questions on the factors affecting the African person. So what then are we to achieve if we ask this question? It will help us to, first of all, bridge the longevity divide and understand the African person outside the frameworks that is being collected or designed by those from Europe and America. Sorry. So then this brings us to the question of life. What is life? Because the center of longevity is based on life, adding life to years and years to life. And if you add life to years without and distorting the person, the foundation, the ontological foundation of the African person, does it still have a representation of what a person is for an African? So you cannot, as an African, be a person outside what it truly means to be a person, since Africans are divided along cultural lines, and since the human person is a product of a culture, all that we live and hope for should be rooted in this foundation. So there is a core African wisdom of Ubuntu. Of course, we all know about that. And what sustains it is what we call the life force or the spirit force, as some persons understand it to be. So for us Africans, we see it as a gift to even live longer and stay stronger, not just because we want to enhance our life or want to live longer, but we also look into what it means to live longer as an African. And this brings us also to what our first presenter tried to explore. So you cannot remove morality out from what it means to live longer as an African. So, which is why I stated clearly that longevity for us means deepening our moral codes and our moral foundation. So there are ontological challenges that is facing this ideology. Now, we are looking at augmented biology, optimizing the cells, and editing gene. Does this augmentation represent what it means to be human as an African? Does these entities remains muntu, like a person for the Zulu, and for us, the Igbos, Mado, does it represent what it means to be a human being for us? So does it carry the moral codes? Does it translate the moral code? Are we able to provide this augmentation in such a way that it doesn't bring in class struggles? These are the core questions that we need to be asking. These are the core philosophical questions, because a personhood means unity of the self, community, and the ancestor. There should be an intergenerational perspective around this conversation. So the enhancement must not really disrupt the continuity of life, which is foundation to the African person. So I had to bridge this gap. I have to look at the African voices and then look at what the global voice, the voices are saying with regards to this ideology, so as to bridge the gaps using Afro-longevity. Sorry, I'm summarizing already. I'm summarizing already. So the comprehensive what I say is that I brought Asuzu's notion of complementarity because whatever that you do to optimize your life, it must also have a kind of a linkage between your person, because you don't exist in isolation. I've mentioned that before. As a person, you are a microcosm of the larger macrocosm. So, and it must also have a relatedness to your personhood. So Aubrey de Grey talk about the re-engineering of the human person, and this is what the Julian is also talking about. But does it really have a holistic representation after the bioengineering? So that is what Afro-longevity tends to do here, is to help us solve the basic problem. And the basic problem is, instead of re-engineering the human person, we need to start from the basics, which is provision of proper understanding of genetic engineering, evolutionary nutrition, and bringing back the people to our biodiversity so that we eat right and solve the basic problem of chronic and terminal diseases that is affecting our life expectancy. So by doing so, we'll be able to spread spread and solve the problem of the longevity divide that is affecting Africans, and through Afro-longevity, we'll be able to help Africans enhance their life better biologically, more of biologically than technologically, but using technology to pinpoint the divide that we can optimize biologically better. Thank you.
Thank you so much for another thought-provoking paper. Thank you so much, Osinachi Akoma Kalu. So, I mean, we are going to have a huge discussion from all this topic, I am sure. So just hold your peace. We'll come to that.